This week's episode of the And She Looked Up podcast is brought to you by Fine Lime Illustrations. If you love quirky, colorful art transformed into fun, handmade stationery items, pretty much guaranteed to brighten somebody's day, that's just what you'll find in my new online shop at finelimeillustrations.com. That's fine as in I'm fine, lime as in the fruit, illustrations.com. Browse the entire collection or sign up for my email list to see some behind-the-scenes peeks into my studio. You'll also get first notice of new product launches and subscriber-only sales. And as an added little bonus, you'll also receive a free coloring sheet to help you relax and de-stress from your day. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the And She Looked Up podcast. Each week, we sit down with inspiring Canadian women who create for a living. We talk about their creative journeys and their best business tips, as well as the creative and business mindset issues all creative entrepreneurs struggle with. I'm your host, Melissa Hartfield, and after leaving a 20-year career in corporate retail, I've been happily self-employed for 12 years. I'm a graphic designer, an illustrator, and a multi-six-figure-a-year entrepreneur in the digital content space. This podcast is for the artists, the makers, and the creatives who want to find a way to make a living doing what they love. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the And She Looked Up podcast. As always, I'm your host, Melissa, and today we are welcoming back Ayngelina Broken to the podcast. Welcome, Ayngelina.
Thanks so much. It's so good to be back here.
Yeah, we haven't spoken to you in a long time. For those of you who are regular listeners, but maybe haven't gone all the way back to the beginning of the podcast, Ayngelina was one of my first guest hosts after Lisa left. I had 3 wonderful women come on the podcast for a month each, and Ayngelina was one of them. And I think when we last spoke, we were kind of in the first 6 months of the pandemic. And for those of you who don't know Ayngelina, she is a travel writer. And so pandemic put a little bit of a damper on what you were doing, and so you were in the middle of pivoting when we last spoke. And today we're mainly going to be talking about what you've been doing with YouTube and video. But before we get into that, maybe tell us a little bit about how you got through those couple of years of the pandemic.
Yeah, I had a really interesting time. It feels like it was 20 years ago, and it also feels like it was like 20 days ago. Exactly. I have no sense of time like most people do. But prior to the pandemic, I was based in Havana, Cuba for 2 years, and I spent a lot of my time in Latin America writing about traditional food around the world. And so when I came home for the pandemic, like most people, I thought it was going to last, 3 months, not 3 years. Yeah, exactly. It was a nice little break. It was, it's like, I'll come home and I'll catch up on work. And then when I realized that it wasn't really going to be 3 months, it was going to be much longer, I started to think about how I could make the best use of my time. And thankfully, my family lives in Nova Scotia. We were doing very well, and had actually the province had set up this bubble where no one could come in or leave really into the province, not even other Canadian provinces. So tourism opened up a little here, and I decided now was the time I wanted to start doing video. And so I'd always wanted to shoot video. And to be honest, I shot video for years without really understanding what to do with it or editing it. Or, I have all of this video that's just on hard drives that exists. But I decided, I was going to do it. I was going to make it happen and to teach myself video. So I did actually take a course. I took a course with a YouTuber. Her channel name is Cup of TJ. And she also shares video about travel and food, has been around for a long time. I watched her, really identified with her. And so I invested a lot of money in that. That was several $1,000s, but it was really great at giving me a kickstart to video. And so I had been blogging at that time for 10 years. And, way back in 2010 and before that, when you really felt a connection with people who read your site,
Mm.
and there was community, and it wasn't all about SEO. I don't know if I'd like to go back then, because also I was not making any
Nobody
money.
made any money. Yes.
But there was like all of those warm and fuzzy feelings, what we were all broke. And so the nice thing is that blogging has changed. Getting those warm and fuzzies are a little bit more difficult now. But YouTube, even though it's very well established, really seems to have taken on the side of SEO and all of those things, but you still have a really great opportunity to create a community. And so I fell hard for video. I love creating it. I love the sense of community. And I went from shooting once a week to twice a week. And now, I'm all in. I still have my website, Bacon is Magic, and I still work on it. But because I have 10 years worth of content, it's able to be a little bit of my second priority. So this summer, while I was home, I didn't shoot any video, and I worked a little bit on that. But, the website is now becoming more of a resource space.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm really dedicating all my time to my one true love, which is YouTube, which is crazy. It's crazy to be 45 and a YouTuber. And also, I think really interesting to do that, to show people that, content creation can be at any age, and you don't all have to be that 21-year-old blonde in a bikini. There's room for all of us here, which is fantastic. I love it.
It is. That's one of the things I love about YouTube as well, is you can go on there and you can find somebody that you can relate to. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
always somebody there. And I follow a lot of older YouTubers and they're very
Yes.
successful. They're just
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. So, and
Mm-hmm.
you were really fortunate in that, as you mentioned, Nova Scotia was Nova Scotia in part of the bigger Atlantic bubble, or did that come later? I don't remember how that worked, but you were able to travel a lot more freely than people in other parts of Canada.
Yeah, we locked down as a province very early, and
Yeah.
then right before the summer hit, because New Brunswick, PEI, Nova Scotia were all doing really well, and
Mhm.
actually Newfoundland at one point was all doing really well. We kind of had our own bubble, so we isolated ourselves from the rest of Canada, and so I was able to travel quite freely. Now the bubble, morphed and changed
Yeah.
depending on how provinces were doing, but for the most part, I hate to say this, but I had 2 summers that were very normal. Things were open, um, and a lot of locals were traveling. A lot of locals stepped up and really wanted to travel and see more of their province. And so I had this captive audience. And at that time, I was only shooting with my phone, and I had a lav mic that I think I bought for $40, and a tripod that would sit on a table. And so it was just kind of me figuring out, who I was on video, and it was really great. And so although I did spend a lot of money on the course, I did not spend a lot of money on technology. And so
Mm.
I told myself, if I can do this, if I prove to myself that I can do this on a regular basis, then I will, invest in technology. However, the phone would be enough for now. And when I look back at that, a lot of people just want to invest so much in technology, but the hardest thing about video is actually getting comfortable on camera,
Hmm.
learning how to tell a story, and just all of the things that you need to shoot. And so working with a phone first is really smart, because you already know how to use your phone. And then you don't have a camera on top of it where you're trying to figure out the technical parts. So,
Exactly.
and to this point, as you know, I told you, 5 minutes ago before we started this, that I did just buy the new iPhone 13 Pro. And the video on that is so stunning that if my camera that I currently use, if they don't come out with a new version of it, when it dies, I might just start just shooting with my phone. because it's great. You can shoot 4K, the
It's
cinematic
amazing,
mode.
the new phones. They are even um and I just mentioned this to you before we started recording as well. I just got a new iPad Pro and I am shocked by the camera on it. It's incredible. I would never
Hmm.
walk around with my iPad filming, but still, like, it's compared to the previous iPad I had. It's better
Yeah.
than my current iPhone. It's
Hmm.
amazing.
It's really fantastic. And so before this, I did have a Google Pixel. I'm not loyal to anyone. Whatever phone has the best video is where I will go. But without a doubt, it's iPhone right now. And it's just been really, it's stunning. And there are so many pro YouTubers with, a million plus subscribers that either use just their phone, or they may use a GoPro and that's it, or some of them are using DJI Osmo has some new pocket camera thing. And so it's really interesting to see the direction that YouTube is going in. At one point, it was all, very cinematic, and you felt a lot of pressure, like everything had to be perfect. And
Hmm.
certainly there are a lot of those channels there. But now I have noticed this movement that people are editing less. It's kind of becoming more real and less polished. And people just want to connect with other people, which I think is really great. And it's really great for new people that they don't feel like they have all of these things. Like if they don't know how to, color, do the color on their video and all of those things, they don't need to, because a lot of people are not doing that, and they're just doing really well because they're doing interesting things, and that's what matters.
It is. I think it's people connect with, like you mentioned earlier, the story. They're more interested in what you have to say than necessarily how it looks. That's not to say that you can put garbage up there.
Right, right. You
But at the
can't.
same time, and I think that's really important. You can getting getting to a point where you're comfortable being on camera and learning how to tell a story through your camera is key, and you can
Hmm.
upgrade your equipment anytime. Like,
Yes. And 6 months ago, my camera broke and I needed to use my phone. And so I have quite a bit of an active community because I did go, once things opened up and I felt comfortable, I did go to Ecuador for 10 months and started shooting a series there. And there are a lot of people who want to retire or move to Ecuador. And so I was able to develop kind of a loyal following there because I took what I knew, food, and I shared the history and culture of food around Ecuador, which people think is a very small country, but actually is quite diverse because they've got the Amazon, the coast, the rainforest. And so food is very different depending on where you go. And
mhm.
so at one point I was on the coast and my camera broke and I was devastated, like really felt like it was the end of the world. And it was also because my phone, I was basically only using it, just to be online. I wasn't even really doing much with it. So it was a Google Pixel 2. So it was quite old, and didn't feel like it, I didn't feel like the footage stood up to my camera, and it didn't. But the people still watched me. It wasn't as clear and crisp,
Mhm.
but all of the videos that I shot with my phone still did really well. And I was open with people because also part of, the sharing of being in Ecuador was, I'm sure this is like true all around the world, is nobody fixes cameras anymore because everybody just shoots with their phone. There was literally no one in the city, not a single camera repair person. And so I think I went 2 weeks and just shot with my phone, but it was great. And it really taught me that people were not watching my videos because of the quality of the picture, but because of the storytelling. And the only way you can learn that is to do it. And you have to really get over yourself and just shoot a lot of video. And the great thing about it is when you look back, you see your old videos and think, wow, I've gotten so much better.
Yeah, I think that's true for anything. So, really, that time you had in Nova Scotia, where you were, for lack of a better term, stuck at home, um,
Hmm.
really gave you the opportunity to A, figure out if this is something that you wanted to spend more time in and invest in, but it also gave you a ton of time to practice.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that with video, especially if you want to start a YouTube channel, you have to post weekly. I mean, once you are really big, you don't have to do that. But I think to learn any kind of new skill, in photography, they say the first 10,000 photos. I would say that, the same thing about YouTube. Probably, it doesn't take 10,000. It doesn't even, I think, take 1,000. I'm not at 1,000 videos yet, but I think I probably started to become really comfortable once I had shot 50 videos. And I kind of knew what I was doing. I knew what I needed to get better at. And I was able to comfortably look into the camera lens instead of at the display.
Right.
And so now it's not weird anymore. Now, the funny thing is when I take time off, like I took this summer off, when I go back and sit with the camera again, it does start to feel weird again, especially because I do so much work in restaurants and places, eating by myself, talking to a camera. So those insecurities start to come back a little bit, but then I just remind myself, who cares about those people? And the nice thing is there are so many people doing content creation now that actually talking into a camera and doing things is quite, normal.
Yeah.
It's not normal, but it's not as abnormal as it used to be. So,
It's
and
not,
people are quite nice.
Yeah, and people don't stop to stare at you anymore and wonder
No.
what you're doing. Now they know what you're doing and they just carry on. So
Yeah.
yeah. So you think it took you 50 videos to get that comfortable, hey?
I think so, yeah. I mean, to the point where I could, in the beginning, I was editing all of my videos too. And so it was really
Yeah,
painful.
we'll
and
get
it
to
did
that.
take a lot
I
of
want
time.
to
Yeah.
ask you about that too.
Yeah. But I think, at the 50 mark, I was like, okay, here's what I do. I didn't need as many takes to do things. I kind of knew, because of travel, I don't storyboard anything. But I did know had a plan going up. Okay, these are the 3 places that I think I'm going to do. And it became a little bit easier for me to do, or at least more comfortable, instead of thinking I need to shoot everything. I need to say a million things. I still talk too much and say too many things, but I am getting better at it. But yeah, at about 50 videos, I felt good. Now that's like a year.
Yeah.
So I mean, 25 in, I was doing it without every video you do, you get better.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
and then when I got to Ecuador, I did a stint where I shot 20 videos in 30 days. So almost one every day because I was traveling to a different place. And that was hard, but also I learned so much. And that was one of the things that I actually learned from the Cup of TJ was that if it's possible for you to batch shooting, because you kind of get into this groove, this mode where what you have to do. And so it's just you progress faster. So instead of, if
it's like immersion. It's like French immersion, right? You're just immersed in it, and that's what it is, what you do, right?
Yeah. And so some people will shoot one a week, but that would have taken me 20 weeks. So in 20 days, I learned what I would have learned in 20 weeks. And so it was really hard, but I also feel like it pushed me kind of to the next level also of feeling more comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned editing. You edited all those first videos yourself. You now work with an editor, which we'll talk about in a minute. But did you find that being the person who did the editing in the beginning, was that really helpful to you, learning the whole process? Like, did it give you an appreciation for how to set up a shot or how you wanted to film something? Or like, do you think that's really valuable, or do you think there's something to be said for just getting an editor right?
Oh no, you have to edit yourself. Whether you do it, a lot of people do it. You can do it on your phone. I know quite a few YouTubers who just edit on their phone for their first little bit. You've got like CapCut and all of these other editing tools that you could. Premiere Pro Rush is on the phone, so you can do it on your phone. I decided to do it on Premiere Pro desktop, and that's because at one point I thought maybe, I wanted to get better at it because I thought I don't know when I'll be at the point where I can hire an editor. And so instead of using, the free Windows or the free Apple software, I thought if I end up becoming an amazing editor, and I mean, I knew that wasn't going to happen, but at least I'll be good at the one where I can do the most. I didn't want to outgrow my editing system. And so I knew it was down to Premiere Pro and Final Cut
Right.
Pro. So, and so it was really great because now I work with an editor who uses Premiere Pro, and we can have a discussion. I know what he can do, what he can't do. I can speak the same language where I'll say, hey, at this point, this footage is a little bit shaky. Can you use the warp stabilizer? And so he can do much more than I ever could. But at least we can have the same kind of language in terms of if there's something that I want changed or done, I know if it's possible and I know how to communicate that to him.
Right. You started working with him when you started traveling again, so when you moved out to Ecuador, or how did you find him, and when was the moment where you were like, I need somebody to help me with this, I don't want to do the editing anymore?
So I met him, so he's from Indonesia. I met him on Fiverr, which just goes to show that just like, online dating on Fiverr, there are like true romance stories because we, it's been such a positive experience for me. But I think I got to the point where it was my last summer before I left. So the second summer in Nova Scotia. And I had started doing partnership work with local tourism boards. And I knew that of all of the work that was coming forward, I didn't have enough time to be able to shoot everything and edit everything. So I knew that I wasn't a fast enough editor because editing was still taking me, 2 to 3 days, even though I was getting better at shooting and I was progressing at editing, but I knew I was never going to be a great editor. And so I decided, because I had sponsored work coming in, that it was worth it to me to invest some of that money in an editor. And so I found him on Fiverr just looking for editors. And he previously had worked for a TV station as a producer and was let off during COVID. And so he had gone on Fiverr because he has a family and that he needed to feed, and thought, well, these are one of the skills that, maybe I can get someone to hire me from another country and I can make a good amount of money to pay for my family. And so I really liked him. I liked his editing. We had good communication up front. And I think it was really because I really pushed him to tell me how he wanted things organized. I mean, I was a type A, because I edited myself, I had kind of learned ways to put things into folders that made sense and ordered them. And so I showed him my organization system, which he really liked. He said, mostly people were just dumping like just a folder of random files that he would look at the time codes and try to make it happen. But and then as we would move forward with things, I would ask him, how can I be better at working with you? And then we eventually moved it off Fiverr, which I know they hate, but like you have to do it. You've got to cut out the middleman. And then I was still shooting one video a week, but then when I got to Ecuador, I just realized I had so much content I needed to move to twice a week. And so we've been doing that. We've been working together now for, I think, 13 months. And it's been really great. It's challenging at times working with someone that is not in your time zone. There's a 12-hour time difference. And then also culturally is very different. So I really have to push him sometimes to tell me, like, if he can't deliver on time or if something's going wrong. Like in a lot of cultures, people don't want to disappoint you. So maybe you won't hear from them. And so we've had a lot of like just conversations about how to work together. His skills are great, but at the same time, sometimes I also need him to manage me, where if he needs feedback from me, he has to just send me a little WhatsApp message to say, hey, have you looked at that video? Like, have you made the revisions? And so but other than, those kinds of things, it's been a really great process. And he has bigger dreams to have his own business where he has several editors work underneath him and he manages them. And I hope that he does that and I can recommend that service to other people, because it's hard to find people you can trust. And I think that was, especially if you're looking on Fiverr or, any of these things, like finding a trustworthy person is difficult. And I think the reason we click so much is that he knows I'm always going to pay him. In the beginning, I actually paid him up front because I knew because of the pandemic that he wasn't doing well. So I prepaid him on some videos to help him get by. And we just have a connection where it's like we both want, he says he feels like my channel is like his channel, you
Oh,
know?
that's
And
nice.
yeah, he has to look at my statistics from time to time to see if in editing, you know, if there are any dips or things that he can help with.
Right.
And he also has suggestions for me on how to do things better. He's, you know, I've sent him my camera settings, or he'll suggest shots to me, or, you know, we have this bigger goal of kind of trying to make this channel bigger together. And I think it's just mutual respect and trust that above just the technical part of editing. So anyway, I'm going to Indonesia in 11 days, and we're going to meet in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to actually get to meet him and his family, and I think that also helps deepen the relationship of when you're working with someone to
Oh, for
have
sure. Yeah.
that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
very
I
excited
think
about that.
that's a really good point. I'm a creative services provider and I work with a lot of clients. And I think my favorite clients are always the ones where they invite me into the point where I feel like I have some ownership over what we're putting out there together. And I want them to excel, and I want to do everything I can to help them excel. And I think that is, if you are somebody out there who hires people to help you, whether it's an editor, a graphic designer, or whatever,
Yes.
try and build that kind of relationship with them, because it becomes much more collaborative and both of you wind up being a lot happier and very often a lot more successful, because it's a joint effort and everyone's emotionally invested in it. So I think that's a really interesting point you made there, and is one that gets overlooked very often. But yeah.
Hey, it's great to have someone who also has ideas for me.
Yeah.
And so, also because so much of this came on, my sister, who was doing some virtual assistant work with me, has taken on more. And she also, it's different when it's family because they have that connection too.
Yes.
But she also has ideas for me. And so it's one of those things that as I grow and I want to continue to grow, I can't be the only person with ideas, and I can't be the only person who does things.
Definitely.
And so as my vision is actually to be doing less of the things and other people doing more. And so, I think editing was just a really great way to offload a lot of work. Now, that said, because the nature of YouTube, I'm still quite involved because also I'm shooting it and it's my story. But the more we work together, the more he knows the types of things that I like, or, we've had a lot of discussions about my goals for the videos and things like that. And so just having someone also work so consistently with you, as you said, it becomes less of I contract work out to you, to like, you are my partner and help me achieve this. And so it's been really great. And the thing is, I think a lot of people think that they have to do everything themselves, but even within my YouTube community with my subscribers, they know that I have an editor. I've shared things with them. They know I'm going to meet him, and I actually want them to see him as part of the process as well, because at the end of the day, my value is not sitting behind a computer and editing the work. Like, that's not where I am the most effective. And so me not doing that, some people just feel like they have to do it. It has to be 100% from them. But I'm still in control of all of it. I still, already today it's, almost 2:00, and I spent 2 hours already just reviewing revisions and preparing works and briefs for him. So I'm still very much involved in the process, but I'm not the one, with the mouse making the magic happen, because people say, oh, they're so professional. And I'm like, that's not me. I shot it, but I did not edit it. He makes it great. And then we just have like lots of conversations and laugh about things. And, because we are from different cultures, and he also needs help. So sometimes he will bring in another editor to help. And I'll see a video and I'll say, hey, is that your friend that edited that? Because I hate that music. Like, his friend just has the worst choice in music. And so I use Epidemic Sound, and my editor has my login information. And so I think he's also shared this with this person helping him. And it's just, I said to him, I'm like, don't let him loose on Epidemic Sound, because everything he pic sounds like it's like from the 70s, like a comic, like a sitcom show, but not in a good way, in a like a really bad way.
Cheesy way, yeah.
A very cheesy way. And so, but it's also nice, I think, when you have that connection with someone that you work with, that you can laugh about those things. And so it also takes away the feeling that you're working alone. And so many entrepreneurs have
Yeah.
that we can't really talk about what it's like to work, because the things we find funny or frustrating, other people would just think that's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the money side of this. I know I know you like to talk dollars and cents, and so do I. And I think it's important for creatives to have these conversations. So, like, just being really upfront here, Ayngelina, you have just over 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, which for somebody who has, I don't know, 13 or 14, sounds huge. But I know that in the greater landscape of YouTube, you would be considered a small creator.
Oh, yeah.
And yet you have managed to monetize this, not just through YouTube ads, but through other channels. And I think this is something that I think would be really interesting to people, is like, how can you monetize when you're still small? Everyone thinks you have to hold out for that ad revenue, whether it's video, whether it's your blog, whether it's whatever. But there are ways to earn some money from this before you hit that mark. Now, YouTube has very specific metrics when it comes to what you need to be able to have ads to earn ad revenue. And I'm not too sure what it is, but I think it's a certain subscriber count and a certain number of watch
hours. Okay. Yeah. So you need to have 1,000 subscribers and then 4,000 watch hours within the previous 12 months. And so that's why in some cases, like, they're really pushing people to do YouTube Shorts right now, because they gain subscribers. It's a great way for people to find you. But I think actually 1,000 subscribers is not that difficult. It's getting people to watch 4,000 hours.
Yeah, that's the one that sounds more intimidating to me.
Yes, it was a huge goal for me to do this before I went to Ecuador. And I did get it before I went to Ecuador, which was great. But it's one of those things. Some of the metrics on YouTube, it's like you sometimes get so involved with the numbers that you can get to the 1,000 subscribers, but none of those people actually watch.
Right.
And you can get to the 4,000 watch hours because maybe you had a viral video. But that doesn't mean you're going to make money. So it's one of those things. YouTube is really about, this is what I love about it, about connecting with people. And even though there is an algorithm and there is SEO, search engine optimization, it is really about connecting with people and creating work that they want to see. And that's what it is about. And so there are things that can help you, and that's like the icing on the cake. Like SEO helps people find you. But the reality is that you need to create a community there, and those people will come back week after week and watch. And so for me, I did have this goal of 10,000. But even like at 7,500, I was still making, I don't mind being open about it. With 10,000, I make $500 a month in ad revenue. Sorry, 500. Did I say 5,000? Because that would be amazing.
you did, but you corrected yourself.
500. Oh my God. If I was making 5,000, I would be celebrating. I make $500 a month on ad revenue on YouTube. That doesn't even pay for my editor. So my goal right now is actually on YouTube, between YouTube and some other things that I'm doing, to pay for my editor. So right now, my website is my primary income, and I am investing money from my website into my YouTube channel. And so for me, if I look at it as a greater picture, because I have my website, being able to add video to partnerships that I work with. So instead of just writing blog posts and Instagram and all of those kinds of things, when I work with destinations, being able to add video has basically doubled my income. Yeah. And that's because video is so valuable, and people really connect with it. And so you can see, it's evergreen content, and different than, say, TikTok or Reels, because instead of trying to communicate something in, between 7 seconds to 60, I can actually, most of my videos are 20 or 30 minutes long. So I have an opportunity to have a different kind of storytelling that complements social media. And then the interesting thing is, when you have a community of people, there are tons of small YouTubers that are actually able to make money from those people, because those people are really invested in you in a way that they aren't always as much in big creators. Because, if somebody has 1 million, subscribers, you're thinking, oh, like they've got it made. But when you're a small creator, people really root for you on YouTube. And I have lots of people who are just so supportive of everything I do, both, with their words and kindness, but also monetarily. And so I think 2 or 3 months ago, I started a Patreon program, and there's a $5 level, $10 level, and then some others, but everybody's kind of at the $5 and $10. And that is really to support me. And so I did take a course through Christine Kaloa, I think I'm pronouncing her last name right, about Patreon. And the most interesting thing for me was she really managed expectations. And on YouTube, people just want to help you. They just want to support you. And so it's not always about giving hidden like videos that are unseen, or most people don't even go to my Patreon. They just give me they just give me $5 or $10 every month and just want to see me progress. And so for some people, they're a little bit more, they do want to see things because they kind of want to see the behind the scenes, or they have questions, or they want to have that greater connection. And there are a lot of people that I can see are never really on Patreon at all, but they just want to support me.
Oh, I'm one of those patrons. I subscribe to multiple Patreons where I almost never go to the Patreon channel. They're making content that I really enjoy, and I don't want them to stop. It's purely selfish. I don't want them to be like, oh, I don't make enough money, I can't do this anymore. So I'm like, here, take my money. So you keep showing up every week.
Yes, and so sometimes it worries me because I think, oh my goodness, like maybe I need to be giving them other things or doing things. But in general, everyone's quite nice. And then that same group of people, I try to have a YouTube live once a month, and they also show up on the live. And there's a function now on YouTube where you can have a super chat where people can just donate money to the chat to you, and that becomes part of your YouTube revenue. And so in that $500 a month that I've been able to sustain, that part of it is from people just in the chat giving me money. It's just honestly the most overwhelming part of kindness when you see that come up on a YouTube live, that people just really value what you're doing and are willing to, give you money. It's really humbling that you affect people in that way. And then also in videos, you see this, I think, to a lesser extent, but still it happens, is that you can give a super thanks. So when people create a video, some people give them a super thanks. And so that's also a monetary commitment. Yeah.
I'm on YouTube right now, and I'm just seeing, I have never noticed that before.
Yeah. And so in some cases, because I cover travel, in some cases people were looking for something, or I had someone who went somewhere based on my recommendation and said it was great. And she sent me $5 for it. And it was just so nice that not only would she come back and say thank you, because, sometimes you help people and they never come back to say thank you, but also then to say that was great, like here's $5 for it. And so, I am very open with my subscribers and people who I connect with, that this is really just an expensive hobby for me right now. And so, and that's not 100% true, because for YouTube, I'm only counting the revenue I make from YouTube, Patreon, and then also this Sunday, Melissa, you don't know this, but I finally launched t-shirts.
Merch. Woohoo!
Yeah, I launched merch. So I watched this channel called Roberto Blake, and he had a 3-hour live based on making t-shirts and selling them on YouTube. And his whole premise of his channel is really about small creators making money. And one of those things is, you might be waiting for the 4,000 watch hours, but you can start making t-shirts at any time. And actually now I think for YouTube, you don't need the 4,000 hours to have your merchandise connected to your channel. So you can be a very small creator. So I created one for all of my um, Ecuador subscribers that says I liked Ecuador before it was cool. And I launched it on my live and people bought the shirts. And so for me, I really want to try to create things where I can give value to people that they can buy. So it's like I am getting something for it, but also they're getting something of value. That makes me just a little bit more comfortable. Of course, you know, with the super thanks and all of those things. I still do believe my videos are very valuable. They take a lot of time for me to create. And I do share a side of Ecuador that nobody else is really talking about through culinary travel.
Yeah, it's just it's not that same tangible exchange of I made this, you give me money, right? I mean, you made a video and they're giving you money, but it doesn't have the same feel as when you like, here's a t-shirt.
Yeah, and the t-shirts, I mean, I think this is great. If you have a small niche, you know, Ecuador is a country, but there's not really a lot of like t-shirts or cool things about it. Like there's really nothing about it. It's not like Colombia or Mexico or even Peru where there's really iconic things and so big brands make t-shirts and other merchandise about it because a lot of people don't really know very much about it. And so these t-shirts, I first shared them with my Patreon group because I thought like, hey, what do you think? And then so they gave me some feedback. Like some of the guys were like, you know, I'm not really a t-shirt guy, but I would love a hoodie. And then I had a couple designs and they picked the one that they liked. And so it's also nice to have this, they're almost like this, you know, group that you can bounce ideas off of. They're not other content creators, so they don't think in the same way. Right. It's just like, do you like this? Would you buy this?
And that's important. It's important to ask your audience. Like,
yeah. And so when they were so enthusiastic about the ability to do this, I just thought it was just really great. And so I think even though I am selling these shirts and taking a very small percentage, it's also something cool for them that they are still, you know, they're so excited. A lot of them are planning to move to Ecuador. And so it's like they're kind of part of this like community. Right. The other thing that was really interesting about it was when we started talking about just different Patreon levels and things that I could provide, one of them had said, you know, we're a smaller group, so why don't we have a Zoom call so you don't have to do all the like the talking, and we can have like a group chat where we don't have to worry about the lag in typing. And so that's something that I'm offering moving forward too. So it's just really nice to almost be like you're the person that connects other people. And that's really, I just feel like what YouTube is. It's just been so much work and exhausting, and burnout on YouTube is a real thing, but also so immensely rewarding. It's like all of the time that you put into it, you definitely see. You've got to commit to it, but I can see why people are so attracted to YouTube, especially now.
And this is kind of why I wanted to have you on to talk about this, because I think I preach about this to the point where I'm sure people just tune me out now. But building community is where it's at when it comes to making a living being a creative. I mean, yes, you can earn revenue through ads, which requires a lot of SEO work and all of that, and you can earn a very good living that way, but it requires work in a different kind of way. And I remember hearing somebody say, when you rely on traffic or SEO, you start every day at zero. But when you have a community, you start every day with that community and you're only building on the community. And I thought that was a really interesting way to look at it that I hadn't before. But there is always the potential to make a living doing what you love if you're growing that community from day one. And, you know, you've just proved it. You are not a huge YouTuber, but you are able to earn revenue from your channel. It's not a huge amount of revenue, but I know that some of the sponsored work, like you mentioned, your sponsored work that where you're able to offer video as an option has doubled your revenue. Yeah. So you are earning extra additional revenue on top of that $500 a month from the work that you're doing with brands and companies. And you do you hustle for that. I don't like using the word hustle, but you actually do go out and you pitch a lot of destinations. And I know you did that during the pandemic. You went to Tourism Nova Scotia, and I know you did some things with Tourism Alberta, and you've worked with Mississauga Tourism in the last little bit. So those are all ways that you have like been really not aggressive, but you've definitely
assertive.
That's a better word.
You know, I don't think, when I look back at the last 3 years, I don't think I have worked with anyone who reached out to me. And
interesting.
I prefer it that way, because I've had some small partnerships, like very small, where it's like, you know, the sites where like they manage Instagram and they want you to, you know, just do an Instagram thing. All of my biggest projects have come from destinations that I reached out to. I pitched the idea, and they really connected with me. Now these are destinations, and we're in Canada, and so there aren't a ton of Canadian travel creators, and I have been around for 12 years. And so most people have maybe kind of heard of me, or, you know, there are not a lot of people who have my specific niche in food of wanting to cover traditional food and like independent places. And so, and also I think because of the pandemic and supporting small businesses we know that it's so crucial to the economy of our towns and cities. I think it was a little bit like good timing, but I've always been that way. I don't want to wait for, you know, hoping that some brand will reach out to me. I would rather create the work that I want to create in the places that I want to create them. And so it's places that I would want to go to. And I've just been so lucky. You know, I just worked with Mississauga, and they basically said to me, you know, just do what you would normally do. We're just trying to facilitate that. And so instead of shooting a video about all the top 10 restaurants, like the hot spots that everybody already knows because they're on every other list, I went and found all of the small independent businesses. And one of the businesses reached out to me afterwards and said they planned to close, but because the video had done so well, they were starting to see new clients, like new diners, and they were able to pay their rent. And that just was, for me, it just made my work so meaningful. It wasn't just about getting paid, but actually saying like my work makes a difference.
Yeah.
And I think as small creators, we can do that, and understand that we do have a role. As I said, you know, my channel is still small, but yeah, you can do so much with it. I think people really connect with people who aren't perfect on camera and don't have a lot of followers.
100%.
Yeah.
Perfection is very overrated.
Yes.
And and most people view it as unattainable. So it just becomes something like where there's the emotional connection is not the same as when you're much more real and but what I think is interesting about that is you went out and you approached all these destinations when probably many of the other travel writers and bloggers out there were like, well, there's no point. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Nobody's going to hire me. But you still went out there and said, hey, I can do this for you.
Yes. I can do work and you can pay me. I'm always like that. I mean, you know, whenever I always like to keep the door open with sponsors, with destinations. I could turn down a lot. And so it's, for me, it's all about numbers. And also, we've talked about this in previous episodes, but I see this as my business. I don't see this as me personally. And so when I talk to people, I'm a bit emotionally removed from the proposals that I offer. I will say to them, you know, I have kind of a standard package. It has a gold, silver, bronze, different ways to work with me. And I will reach out to everybody I know, you know, like probably 50 to 75 different destinations in a year. And I'll say, hey, if you are focusing on culinary travel, I'm really interested in what you're doing there. Here's some examples of work that I think would be similar to what I could do for you. And here are some packages. And so maybe 1 in 10 I will be able to work with. Maybe 2 in 10 actually respond back to me. 3 in 10 I try to chase down. And some of them are just nice enough to say, hey, no, right now.
Yeah.
But I will say that's great. Like, let's just stay in touch. If something comes up, I would love for you to keep me in mind, and then I reach out to them again, 6 months, 12 months later to say, by the way, I'm still here. And so you just never know. And in some cases, people will say, hey, I saw your packages, but you were too expensive. And so I'll respond back, okay, well, like, what do you have for your budget? Maybe we can work out a custom package. These are just examples of some of the things that I do. And so I have been able to do that. They've been smaller programs, but again, it also helps me build my record of working with different destinations and videos. And then also hopefully having great work with them leads to other people seeing that work. And so you have to kind of remove yourself. You are a business. That you've got to remove the business from the creator side of it, and just know that a lot of people are just not going to respond to you, and that's okay. That's the truth for everybody.
It is, and it's one of the biggest mistakes I've seen over the last decade working with content creators is this tendency when somebody says no to get very defensive about it or be like, I'm not going to bother with them again in the future. And that's so the wrong way to go about it. It's just, we've said this so many times on this podcast through so many different interviews, but no doesn't mean no. It just means no, not right now. But if you treat it as a solid no and you shut that door, it is going to be a no forever.
And also Canada is very small. So there are only so many people that we can work with. I've worked with a lot of people. I also go back and work with people multiple times. And so it's always in my head that, we haven't worked, I just worked with Edmonton. I hadn't worked with them since 2014 or 15. It had been 7 years. So it was like, hey guys, like we haven't done anything in a while. I'm focusing on video. I would love to do something with you. And then we were able to work something out. So it's always kind of keeping that, also your work community, like your colleagues and the people in your industry open. You never know what they're working on. And I literally just sent out probably 20 emails last week and said to people, hey, I know it's summer and everybody's wrapping up for the end of the year. I am not doing anything right now in 2022. I'll be gone, but I'm already starting to look at 2023. If you have something coming up, I would love to talk to you. It'd be great to plan ahead and we can kind of work it into my travels.
Absolutely. And if you pop up enough in people's inboxes and you're always friendly and polite and just very open to work with them, that's I think the key word is the word with, eventually you just become the person they think of because you're popping up regularly.
And I think it's very easy to look at what different brands are doing and seeing that they've worked with other people and you're like, oh, like their work isn't very good, or I can't believe they worked with them and they're not working with me. Like, you don't know what's going on in the background or what that other person really does offer. And so I would say spend less time looking at what other people are doing and just focusing on like, who do you want to work with? Start looking at what their brand is doing, because I also think it's really great to say, hey, I see you're doing this kind of stuff. I'm focused on it too, supporting them online. So you're not just out of the blue, and then coming in with like an interesting idea, because even if they think they don't need you, maybe it's because they don't know what you do or what you offer. One of the things that's really interesting about me is that, one of the great ways that I was able to get so many Atlantic Canadian partners is that during the pandemic, I really focused on Facebook, and I focused on Facebook video, and then also just posting twice a day, because so many people are on Facebook. Facebook is not sexy to brands or destinations. It's like they want TikTok or they want Reels. They do not want Facebook. But when I show them my numbers on Facebook, all of a sudden they are interested because they realize that, one, I do have a very active Canadian audience, and it was very, very active in Atlantic Canada. Even though my followers were only, I think at that time, 20,000 fans on Facebook, my actual reach for a lot of posts were reaching up to 100,000 people. And so maybe you didn't like Facebook before, but there is a real business reason. And so I would always take that time with them to say, hey, yes, most of my followers on Instagram are from outside Canada, but let's take a look back at Facebook where we can do a video and that video is shareable, and I can show you that because other people have shared it. So it's just kind of getting creative with what you offer and recognizing the value versus constantly comparing yourself to other people.
This is why it is so important to know your numbers and know what those numbers mean, and not just the vanity metrics, but if you can, like, that's what brands and partners and anyone you want to work with, that's what they understand. They understand return on investment. Right?
Yes.
And if
Yes.
you're only looking at those couple of vanity metrics and you're not digging deeper, you are never going to be in a position to make your case.
Yes.
Right?
Like, for example, for me, YouTube is a really interesting thing because now that so many people watch it on TV,
Mm.
and YouTube has actually started focusing less on subscribers. So when you turn on your TV to YouTube, if you watch my video yesterday and maybe last week, already when you turn on YouTube, the home screen, you're probably going to see one of my videos, even
Oh,
if you don't subscribe to me. It's just going to show it because it's like, oh, hey, Melissa, we saw that you watched two of our videos. You're probably going to want to watch another video. And
YouTube
that's,
has one of the best algorithms for telling me what I want to watch and being
yes,
right. Like,
yes.
so good.
You don't need to actually subscribe to anyone. Just watch some videos and they will show more of that person. And if you subscribe to someone and you're not watching their videos, they'll stop showing
Yeah.
you those videos. And so even though for me, I have 10,000 subscribers, last month I had 271,000 views.
Yeah.
And so in my media kit, yes, I do state my number of subscribers, but I also have a page. I have a one page that shows, the analytics from where the subscribers are from, what their age is, what their gender is, but also said, even though I have a small subscriber base of 10,000, that actually extends beyond because I had 271,000 views. And so now you see, I mean, I think we've all seen this. It's, someone who has a channel of 5,000 or 500,000 subscribers, but then their views on their videos are 3,000. And
Yeah.
so the subscriber number is becoming less and less important. That said, I mean, I think we all have to be realistic. There are a lot of brands and destinations that don't really care about that. They're only going to look at like the subscriber
For sure.
number.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to work at both. So you're constantly begging people to subscribe to your channel, even though it doesn't make a difference on YouTube. It only makes a difference in brand partnerships, but you got to play the game. That's just how it is.
Definitely. Definitely. So, because we're coming up on the hour, you are getting ready to head out to Indonesia on your next big trip.
Yes.
So that's really exciting. And do you, your fan base in recent months has been really Ecuadorian focused. And do you think, like, do you see this as an opportunity to build on that fan base, or do you think some of the people who love your Ecuador content will disappear, or how are you hoping that's all going to play out for you?
Well, the short answer is yes and yes. When you create content about a certain country, people are selfish. They want to watch things that are valuable to them. I'm the same way. Sometimes I watch a lot of travel YouTubers, and if they're in a country that I'm not interested in, I just don't watch them. And then sometimes I'll see that they're back into a country that I am interested in, and so I'll start watching them again. And so I do know that I will lose some subscribers. However, I just had a video out on Saturday about digital nomad visa. Now, a lot of the people who follow my channel will not get that visa. They want to retire. They're looking for other types of visas.
Right.
And so when I posted that video, I didn't think it would perform very well because I thought, people are going to see it. They're not going to be interested in it because they're going to get the retirement visa. But actually, quite a few people still watched it. And so that was actually a really good test for me because it showed me that people were interested in me. And so even though the story I was telling them about the process of getting this visa wasn't right for them, a lot of people stuck significantly through because I think it was 2/3 the way through I talked about this fine that I was getting. And so they weren't just popping in and getting out. They were actually watching quite a bit.
Right.
And so I have prepped them for months about that I am going to Indonesia, but that I am coming back to Ecuador in October. And so I definitely will lose some people because they just want the information
Right.
and that's why they're there. But I do think that I'll be able to have a significant amount carry over. And then Indonesia, when you go to Southeast Asia, they're heavy, heavy YouTube viewers. And so
Interesting.
yeah, Indonesia is actually the third largest country for YouTube viewers. So it's first,
Really?
I don't know if it's India or the US first, but one of them is number one. And then Indonesia is number three. There are so many people. Listen, I didn't know anything about Indonesia before I started researching for this trip. And I'm only going because I want to meet my editor. And so I learned a lot. Number one, it's gigantic, but also there are tons of people and they're really heavy YouTube viewers. And I think the rest of the world before Canada and the US started watching YouTube as their primary like TV.
Mm-hmm.
I think Canada and the US and even Europe to a little bit of an extent. I know when I was there in 2017, I met a lot of people in Italy that watched a lot of TV shows on YouTube. Like they were watching, oh God, I can't remember the name of that food channel, but Vice.
Oh, okay.
Vice's
Yep.
food channel. Yeah, whatever Vice's food channel is. Anyway, they were already watching that. They were watching lots of shows on YouTube. And so people kind of jumped on that. Anyway, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I mean, at the end of the day, I can't let YouTube dictate where I go. Otherwise, I would go to Pakistan right now because that's where all the big YouTubers are getting their views.
Oh,
But I don't
interesting.
want to really go there right now. I mean, someday I'd like to go, but I have to go the places that I want to go and hope that my audience will follow me or that I create an audience that is interested in where I go. So we'll see how it goes. This is a big test. If I went from Ecuador to, say, Mexico, that would be easy because a lot of the people who are interested in retiring in Ecuador are also interested in Mexico.
Right.
Going from Ecuador to Indonesia's, I'm just going to see how it goes. I'm not going to stress out about it. I mean, the nice thing about not being big is that you risk less.
Very true. That's very true. And that's, I think, why, if we go all the way back to the beginning of this, where we were talking about how you had that time in Nova Scotia where you were able to practice and try new
Mm-hmm.
things and stuff, and you weren't at 10,000 subscribers at that point, you had a lot of freedom to make mistakes because, yeah, there's people watching, but there's not hundreds of thousands of people watching at that point. And
Yes.
there's a lot of freedom in knowing that you can make a mistake and it's not the end of the world, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just, okay, pick up and try again tomorrow. So I think that's really important to
Mm-hmm.
remember.
Before I forget to, I also just want to just call out three channels because there are three channels that I watch all the time.
Yeah.
As I said, it's all about, it is really about like finding an audience, making a connection, learning your own voice. But there is kind of the YouTube business side, which I think
Yes.
can
There's a
help things
lot of ins and
along.
outs there.
Yeah, and so there are three channels that I think are both they're both the business of YouTube, but also I think very realistic in that they talk a lot about burnout. They
Hmm.
talk about creating community. So even though they're very much analytics, which I love,
Hmm.
it's always with in a lens of these are analytics, but if you don't have a community, you have nothing. And so the three channels are Roberto Blake,
Right.
and that was the selling of the
The
t-shirts, and he
t-shirts,
also
yeah.
does a lot of he's really focused on small creators and helping small creators make a living, which I think is a really interesting side of it. And he really hustles. He's got different channels doing lots of interesting things. And then the other one is Channel Makers, and so it is the YouTube side to Income School. Income School is like the blogger, it's a big blogger course, like how to build websites that are profitable and all
Mm.
the affiliate sites and stuff like that. But the guy that runs it, really interesting. He actually took a month off because of burnout, and so he does a lot of research into like the numbers behind YouTube, but also about how do we as a community stay healthy creating instead of constantly feeling like we have to output and be online. And the interesting thing about it is he has theories about it and then does a massive amounts of research to actually show you like
Oh,
what you're putting time into, is it worth it?
I just That's so funny you mentioned him. I didn't know the name of his channel. I just went to his channel just now to see if it was who I thought it might be. And
Yeah.
one of the women in my mastermind group actually posted one of his videos for all of us last week because how the YouTube algorithm works in
Yeah.
2022. And
Oh, that was
she's,
great.
yeah, and
Yeah.
she's like, even if you don't do YouTube, I think so many of the things he talks about in here would be applicable to pretty much any social channel that we
Yes.
work on. And so I watched the video and I was like, there was so much good stuff in it. I'm like, I need to watch this like 3 or 4 more times just to absorb it all.
I like him, and I really like his approach to having a theory and researching that theory,
Mm,
and really having numbers to back it up. And so I think it's actually, yeah, I really like that. I also really like that he's still very focused on community, and also understanding that, there's a real discussion about on YouTube about people burning out and
hmm.
not lasting more than 7 years. I think having been a blogger for 12 years, I've gone into YouTube with like a little bit more knowledge of what it takes, but also what it can take from you.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little bit more aware of that. And so I do really appreciate channels that are not just like, you got to post every, like Gary Vee, like you got to hustle,
Mm-hmm.
you got to push like stuff out every day. And I'm not about that. Like I want to have some brain space left for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And then the third channel is vidIQ. And it's also, it's, I think, a really great channel that there's a lot of bad advice out there on YouTube. And vidIQ is a keyword research tool for YouTube,
Oh, okay.
that I don't use, but I love the channel so much that I'm actually going to switch. I was using a different keyword search tool. And so what he does is he talks about just a lot of like practical things that people do on their channel that is wrong, or turning people away, or like they'll look at different channels and say, this is why this video is not doing well, because similar to channel makers, it wasn't kind of within the scope of what you usually provide, or you took too long to
Yeah.
get to the point, or it's just really practical advice. And those are the only three I watch. There are tons of other channels, so many people trying to make money off of telling other people how to make money off of YouTube.
Mm,
But I think these are like three responsible, common sense, research based, like also pushing community that makes you feel like, again, you're part of a community
mm.
without, why am I always failing? It's constantly for them. You don't need to have the 5 million subscribers in order to be successful, which I think is a really important message.
Absolutely. And we will put links to all of those in the show notes if you all want to check them out, along with all the other things we've talked about today. Before we go, I have one last question for you, and that is, if there is somebody out there listening right now who maybe, like me, has 13 subscribers or 50 subscribers, and they're wondering whether or not they should invest the time into video, what would be the one piece of advice you would give them if they're kind of on the fence, or one piece of useful information, I guess?
Sure. I think it's consistency and time.
Mm-hmm.
And so no one's going to find you right away.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have one subscriber, 13 subscribers for a long time. But if you post every week and you create content that you love, and you love the process of learning, that keeps you going. I have lots of videos that don't do well, and then I have those videos that do well. The nice thing about YouTube is I feel like it's like a relationship. If you're committed to it, you give it time, you massage it a little, eventually it works out. And so you just need to have patience with both of those.
Very good advice. Um, Before we wind up for the day, where can people find you on YouTube and elsewhere on the internets?
So my name, Angelina, has a silent Y, which is great for getting your own handles on social media. Not great on audio, but it's Ayngelina. And so you can find me on YouTube. If you look up Ecuadorian food, I'm sure I will pop up there if you can't remember how to spell my name. And you'll also find me on Instagram, and then on Facebook as Bacon is Magic, and as my website, Bacon is Magic. I'm also on Angelina on TikTok, and I am really trying to embrace short video, but I'm failing miserably
Eh,
at it.
it's highly
So
overrated in my books, but whatever.
I know I'm trying not to be a hater, but it's just like now that I've seen the value of long-term video and the connection,
Hmm.
I don't see how I can get that in TikTok. So that's at the bottom of my priority list, but I'm still there. My goal is once a week. That's all I can do.
that, and actually, if you search "Bacon is Magic" on YouTube, Angelina is the first person that pops up. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah, so that's an easy way to find you as well if you can't
Yeah.
remember how to spell her name. But yeah, she's the first person to pop up. And so I know that you are getting ready to head out on your next big adventure. So I wish you tons of luck. I know we'll talk while you're out there, and I can't
Yes.
wait to see. I'm actually very excited to see your Indonesia content because that is a country that fascinates me. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah, so that is it for this week, everyone. Big thanks to Angelina for being here and helping us with the beginning of season 4 of the podcast. And I will be back next week with another brand new guest, and we will talk to you all then. Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. If you're looking for links or resources mentioned in this episode, you can find detailed show notes on our website at andshелookedup.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for more business tips, profiles of inspiring Canadian creative women, and so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show via your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. We always love to hear from you, so we'd love it if you'd leave us a review through iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Drop us a note via our website at andshелookedup.com or come say hi on Instagram at andshелookedup. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.